Back in February, I had a little road trip in the Central European and West Balkan region. One of my destinations was Ljubljana, the capital city of Slovenia, and I gotta tell you, I've seen some quirky stuff over there. Thanks to seeing Slavs squatting on walls of churches, finding people smoking weed around the old Socialist Yugoslavia memorials, Hare Krishna followers trying to convert me, and people casually walking their big birds in downtown of Ljubljana, I did not have time to get bored there. But most importantly, I got to learn about the captivating history of this city, and I got to admire its unique and outstanding architecture. So in this video, I'm gonna talk about the history of the Slovenian capital, mainly its architecture, just to explain why you should visit Ljubljana. This video is sponsored by me and my dream to become a stock footage creator. If you enjoyed the clips you see in my videos and you would like to reuse them, you can find them on Shutterstock in 4K and 60 FPS, so if you purchase them from there, you can zoom in to all the little details and slow them down to make it look all cool and cinematic. You can find the link in the description below. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In case you're new here, hi, I'm Anna, the Transylvanian villager, and I make videos about random topics related to Central and Eastern Europe because I feel like there's not enough content about it online. So if you're into that, smash that subscribe button and check out my older videos after you're done with this one, of course. In this video, we're gonna take a deep dive into the history of Ljubljana, a city whose name I cannot pronounce correctly because I am unable to learn how to pronounce that South Slavic little sound.
Try to pronounce these two letters very fast. Lj, lj, and then try to say lj, lj.
Before we take a look at each building and monument erected from the Middle Ages all the way to the Socialist Yugo era, I'd like to talk about what Slovenia actually is. Since due to the fact that it's a post-communist ex-Yugoslavic country, it is often categorized by the Western-made stereotype of Eastern Europe bad, which is quite far from the reality. So without further ado, let's dissect this topic. Slovenia is a tiny country of around 2.1 million people located in Central Europe bordering Italy, Austria, Hungary, Croatia and the Adriatic Sea. And Slovenes get slightly upset when you call it an Eastern European or Balkan country.
This river here is the official geographical limit between Balkan and Middle Europa. So beware, on the other side, horror Oriental despotism, on this side, Europe civilization.
Now to clarify this topic, the weird people who think that Europe looks like this label Slovenia as Eastern Europe due to the fact that it's a Slavic country and it was part of Yugoslavia, which had like a very short association with the Eastern Bloc. But before World War I, the land always had closer ties with the Austrian Empire, and you can clearly see its influence on Slovenia's culture and architecture, which ties it to Central Europe more than to Eastern Europe. But I cannot deny the Balkan influence on some of their cultural practices. The name of the country, Slovenia, not to be confused with Slovakia, literally means land of the Slavs, because when Slovenes choose a name for something they prioritize efficiency over creativity, and that is why you might see hotels called the hotel or restaurants called the restaurant over there. According to statistics, Slovenia is one of the best countries to live in Europe. Its quality of life index is in the same category as Germany and Sweden, plus it's the second safest country in Europe right after Switzerland. The capital city, Ljubljana, dates back to the Middle Ages, which was built upon the territory of an ancient Roman settlement called Julia Aemona. And archaeologists often call it the cradle of civilization since lots of prehistoric artifacts have been dug up on its territory, including the world's oldest wheel. Slovenes who live outside of Ljubljana often make fun of the capital, claiming that Ljubljana is just a swamp. Well, that's not far from the truth. A few kilometers south of Ljubljana, you can stumble upon the Ljubljana Marsh, which is the country's largest wetland, and it's famous for its important archaeological findings and its unique wildlife. But sadly I couldn't visit that part due to my limited time and the crazy February weather. The origin of the city's name is debated, but the most popular theory is that it's derived from the Slavic ljub, meaning to love or to like, which is an appropriate name because Zaljubljen sam u ovaj grad. The city's symbol is a dragon, which represents power, courage and greatness, and it's still debated whether it originated originates from ancient Slavic folklore or the legend of Saint George. What stunned me the most about this city is the beautiful architecture, which includes everything from medieval castles to Vienna Secession style palaces and brutalist skyscrapers. Plus, it's full of beautiful pedestrian zones. I visited the city during the carnival season, so if you notice some people dressed in weird costumes walking around in my clips, don't be alarmed. With that said, let's check out some buildings and monuments from Ljubljana. Ljubljana was first mentioned in historical records in 1144, and its significance began to rise in the 13th century, when it became the capital of the province of Carniola, a historical region which was a state of the Holy Roman Empire that was conquered by the Habsburgs in the 13th century and later became part of the Austrian Empire. The most important piece of that era that still exists today is the Ljubljana Castle, an 11th century fortification standing on the hill above downtown of the capital. The original building was made of wood and stone, which was demolished and rebuilt in the 15th century when the complete walls, towers and the drawbridge were constructed together with a chapel on the inside. At that time, its main purpose was to defend the empire against the Ottoman invaders and the peasant revolts. In later centuries, it was occupied by the French army twice, and it was taken back by the Austrian Empire later on. After some extensive renovations, which lasted over 3 decades, the castle was finally opened as a location for cultural events, weddings, museums and exhibitions. I really enjoyed the exhibition of Slovenian history, not to mention the museum of puppetry, which was just wonderfully creepy. With the end of the Middle Ages, the city went through an interesting metamorphosis labeled as early modernity. In the 15th century, Ljubljana has gained a large amount of popularity due to its art scene, especially due to its painters and sculptors, whose work you can currently find all over the city center and in the National Gallery. In 1511, the city was severely damaged by the Idrija earthquake, which triggered an era of reconstruction in the Renaissance style. The town hall was constructed in the late 15th century and is still used as the seat of the municipality of Ljubljana. The building reflects Venetian architectural influences, which is mostly visible on the facade and the arched balcony. Northwest to the current day center, a 15th century tower used to stand in the woods. In the 17th century, a new castle was erected upon the ruins of the old tower, which is known today as Tivoli Mansion or Tivoli Castle. The most iconic pieces of the building are the dog statues at the stairways, which carry quite a dark legend. These were made in the 1860s by Anton Verkorn, an Austrian sculptor whose work you're probably familiar with if you watched my video about Zagreb. These dog statues have one giant flaw, which is that they don't have tongues. And according to rumor, Verkorn unalived himself after he realized this mistake. Since it was February and the weather was kind of foggy, the castle had a slightly creepy vibe, but I hope I'll be able to visit it in the summertime too, when the flower garden is blooming. On your way up to the Ljubljana castle, there's the tiny St. Florian's Church, which was built in 1696. Despite its small size, the church is adorned with some beautiful sculptures, frescoes, and paintings from the 18th century. The most outstanding one being the sculpture of Saint John of Nepomuc, designed by Francesco Ropa, the Italian sculptor whose work you can find all over Central and Southeastern Europe, and his name will come up in this video quite often. Between 1646 and 1660, a beautiful Baroque-style Franciscan church was built on the current President Square. The church was originally painted red, which is the symbolic color of the Franciscan monastic order. However, the church has faded to a salmon pink color over time, and the locals preferred this one over the red one, so they decided to keep it this way. On the top of the church, there is a massive statue of the Madonna with the child. Above the portal, there's a statue representing God the Father, and on the sides, there are statues of an angel and the Virgin Mary. And if you take a closer look, there's someone slap squatting on the wall. In the early 18th century, the construction of the stunning Ljubljana Cathedral began on the site of an old Romanic church, which was first mentioned in historical records in the 13th century, but it was burned down in 1469, presumably by the Turks. The new Baroque church was designed by a Jesuit architect with 2 side chapels in the shape of a cross. Its dome was only added in 1841, since originally a fake dome was painted on the arch above the center of the cross. The exterior walls are adorned with various statues of biblical figures and bishops, as well as frescoes and the sundial. The main door depicts the history of Christianity in Slovenia, created to commemorate the 1250th anniversary of Christianity in Slovenian territory and the visit of Pope John Paul II. The Arsign Church of the Holy Trinity was built between 1718 and 1726, and it stands in Baroque style. The church became famous for its altar, which was made by Francesco Roba with the use of African marble. In front of the church is the Holy Trinity column, built on the place of the old wooden column, which has been around since 1693. The stone version was made by, as you guessed it, Francesco Roba, and at some point it was replaced by a replica, but according to online sources, today the original one is standing in front of the church yet again. There's a hidden little gem that can be easily missed when you walk around the cathedral, and that is the Seminary Palace, which houses the two-story seminary library, Ljubljana's first public library. The most iconic part of the building is the portal, flanked by two Hercules statues which were carved by Angelo Putti, and a text saying Virtuti et Musis, which is Latin for virtuous and artistic. On the inside, the ceiling is decorated by the works of Italian Renaissance painter Giulio Quaio, which are an allegory of theology, giving power to faith, hope, and love. Right next to the city hall, there is an iconic fountain, commonly referred to as the Roba Fountain, a copy of the famous fountain of three Chronolian rivers created by Francesco Roba. The original one was made in 1751, and it is one of Ljubljana's best-known Baroque monuments, which was inspired by Bernini's Fontana dei Quattro Fiumi, that Roba fell in love with during his visit to Rome. According to folk belief, the fountain represents the gods of the three rivers of Carniola, the Ljubljanica, Sava, and Krka, and of course the three territorial units of the region. The water pool has an interesting shell-like shape, and the obelisk in the center is 10 meters tall. Rumors say that this was Roba's last work in Ljubljana, because while sculpting it he became extremely poor, and as soon as the work was done he had to move to Zagreb. In 2006, the original fountain was renovated and moved into the National Gallery, and the replica was set up at its place. All in all, this era left the city with some outstanding Baroque works of art, but in the 18th century the city's artists and architects took a liking to a different style. For a short period of time from 1809, Ljubljana or Leimbach became the capital of the Illyrian provinces under Napoleonic rule. In 1813, however, the city returned to Austria and it became an administrative center of the Kingdom of Illyria in the Austrian Empire. The Congress of Laibach, hosted in 1821, temporarily fixed the political borders of Europe. For the Congress, a large square was built on the site of a smaller Baroque square, which is surrounded by some of the most beautiful buildings of that era. In 1867, Slovenia became part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire when the dual monarchy was established, and it remained a part of it until World War I. In 1895, the city suffered a massive earthquake which destroyed around 10% of the city. All these events together contributed to change in the capital's architecture style and the city's revival. A part of the aforementioned Congress Square is the University of Ljubljana, formerly known as Provincial Mansion, where the Congress was held. This building was severely damaged by the 1895 earthquake, to the point that it required a complete demolition and reconstruction. The building was redesigned as a Renaissance palace with a few Gothic revival elements. From 1902, the building became the state mansion of Carniola, but in 1919 it was taken over by Slovenia's first university, which comprised 5 faculties: law, philosophy, technology, theology, and medicine. And from there it grew from 5 initial subjects into a community of 23 faculties and 3 art academies, and it is Slovenia's largest educational and research institution. The beautiful Philharmonic Hall was constructed in 1891, designed by Adolf Wegner. No, not that Adolf Wegner, I mean the famous Austrian architect. The building's facade is designed in Neo-Renaissance style, with rounded corners, which were popular elements of theater buildings at that era. In 1930, parts of the building were redesigned by Jože Plečnik, Slovenia's most famous architect, who left his mark all over the city. Another iconic piece is the triple Triple Bridge, a set of 3 bridges that connects the medieval and the modern sides of the city across the Ljubljanica river. Although the official construction of the bridge began in the 1840s, according to historical records, there used to be a smaller wooden bridge on its place way back in the 13th century. However, in the 1920s, the bridge started to become a traffic bottleneck, which is why the famous Slovenian architect Jože Plečnik designed 2 extensions. The construction of the new form was finished in 1932, and in 2007 all 3 bridges became parts of the pedestrian zone. In the old part of the city, you might notice an interesting looking building with a unique architecture style. This one is known as the Hauptmann House, and it's labeled as an architectural masterpiece due to the fact that it survived the 1895 earthquake. The building was erected in 1873, and in 1904 it was renovated with an Art Nouveau touch. The beautiful Ljubljana Opera House was opened in 1892, designed by Jan V. Hradski and Anton Hruby in Neo-Renaissance style, adorned with statues made by the famous Slovene sculptor Alojz Gangl. The building is richly decorated with statues and columns supporting a tympanum with some stunning details carved into it. The 2 figures and the tympanum represent poetry and glory, and the figure with a torch above them is the genius. On the facade you can see 2 allegorical statues that represent comedy and tragedy. The Krasia building stands right at the entrance of the old town near the Triple Bridge, and it's used by municipal offices, the Krasia Gallery and the Ljubljana Visitor Center. This was constructed right after the earthquake, and it shows a combination of Neo-Renaissance and Baroque styles. On the facade you can see some beautiful sculptures which were also created by Alojz Gangl. It's time to talk about everyone's favorite piece of Ljubljana's architecture, the Dragon Bridge, which has become the icon of the city. The bridge was finished in 1901, and it was Ljubljana's first reinforced concrete structure, as well as one of the largest bridges in Europe at that time. According to the original design, the sculptures were supposed to be winged lions, but luckily its creators have changed their minds about that. The construction plans were first laid out by the Slovene professor Josef Melan, whose specialty was reinforced concrete bridges and the theory underlying static calculations for large suspension bridges. Its current Art Nouveau appearance was created by Dalmatian architect Yuri Zaninovic, who designed the concrete slabs of the reinforced concrete structure, the balustrades, and the iconic sheet copper dragon statues. And I gotta say, I absolutely love these dragons. The Prešeren monument is a late historicist bronze statue of the Slovene national poet France Prešeren, facing the window of the house where his supposed lover used to live. There's also a sculpture of a muse above him holding a laurel branch, and the poet is dressed in the outfit of the period, holding a book. The pedestal is adorned with various bas-reliefs depicting scenes from the poet's works, such as the baptism of Savica and Fisherman. According to legends, letters about the creation of the statue and some money were actually built into the pedestal. Close to the Prešeren monument you can see Ljubljana's oldest department store, the Urban's House, which is also known as Imperium Gallery. Its construction was commissioned by a local merchant in 1902, and on top of the building above the front facade there is a neo-Baroque statue of Mercury, who is the god of commerce and the protector of merchants. The Grand Hotel Union was Ljubljana's first modern hotel, which was constructed in 1903 based on the designs of Croatian architect Josip Vančaš, whose work you can find all over Bosnia and Herzegovina, Croatia and Slovenia. At that time the hotel was the city's largest building, having the biggest function hall in the entirety of the Balkans, which was due to its complex iron roof structure, considered to be a great technological achievement. The building was designed in the Art Nouveau style. It consists of 2 wings connected by a protruding domed corner turret, and its facade is ornamented with plant motifs which vary from floor to floor. Talking about Josip Vančaš, close to the Grand Hotel Union you can find the People's Loan Bank building, which was built in 1907. The most remarkable features of its Art Nouveau facade are ceramic tilings, not to mention the wrought iron balcony railings. On the rooftop you can see 2 barefoot female figures with bare shoulders holding a pouch, a beehive, and a couple of shields bearing the images of a bee and an ant, which are symbols of frugality, diligence, and financial wealth. On the northern side of the Ljubljana Cathedral there's a little passage under arching pillars which have a bas-relief of the coat of arms of the Kingdom of Yugoslavia on top, and 2 faces on the bottom which commemorate a dark moment of Ljubljana's history. The 20th century began with rising tension between the Slovenian and the German-speaking communities when a massive conflict broke out in Ptuj, which led to nationwide demonstrations, including in Ljubljana, where provocations towards the peaceful protesters triggered a violent conflict. Since the local police failed to stop the rioting, the Austrian military took over the situation, which resulted in the death of 2 innocent bystanders, the 22-year-old printer Rudolf Lunde and the 15-year-old Ivan Adamic. The round bas-relief portrays Lunde and Adamic with a text that explains the whole situation above their faces. Conflicts aside, this era was the rebirth of Ljubljana, and many of the pieces added to the city's architecture in that time became the most iconic elements of the city. But this era ended in 1918 when Slovenia broke away from the Austrian-Hungarian rule and became a part of a different kingdom. In 1918, Slovenia joined the Kingdom of Serbs, Croats and Slovenes, which was renamed to the Kingdom of Yugoslavia in 1929. Yugoslav architecture already came to existence before the establishment of the state, thanks to a number of South Slavic artists and architects who organized a series of art exhibitions in Serbia in the name of a shared Slavic identity. In 1918, the Slovenian National Gallery was established, which was originally hosted in the Krešija Palace of Ljubljana. The gallery was moved in the present location in 1925, which is an 1895 palace formerly used as the Slovenian Cultural Center, hosting various cultural associations of national importance. The gallery hosts the mysterious 15th century Vlad III the Impaler as Pilate judging Jesus by an unknown artist. Also, Pietro Liberi's antiquity scene, Ivana Kobica's iconic coffee drinker, Vlaho Bubovac's Andromeda, and many more. The Cobbler's Bridge was built by the architect Jože Plečnik in the early 1930s, in place of an old wooden bridge which connected the Mestni Trg and Novi Trg squares. The bridge provided space for cobblers' workshops, which is what it was named after. The Cobbler's Bridge is decorated with characteristic balusters and tall different-sized pillars topped with stone balls. Its uniquely dynamic appearance comes from the central pillar's lamps that are slightly shorter than the rest. The Saints Cyril and Methodius Church is an Eastern Orthodox church located near the National Gallery of Slovenia, and it was built in Serbo-Byzantine revival style in the 1930s, based on the designs of Serbian architect Momir Korunovic. The most iconic characteristics of the building are the 5 golden crosses on the top. The interior is filled with frescoes made by various Serbian painters, an iconostasis made by a Macedonian woodcarver, and icons made by a Slovene painter. The beginning of World War II ended the era of the Royalist Yugoslav architecture styles, and soon the city began to develop a more socialist vibe. Skipping through the dark days of World War II after the foundation of the Socialist Republic of Yugoslavia, given that the country stayed free from the Iron Curtain, it adopted a hybrid identity that combined the architectural, cultural and political leanings of both Western liberal democracy and Soviet communism. At the beginning of the Socialist era, during the Republic's brief association with the Eastern Bloc, Slovene architects adapted the Socialist architecture style, but after Tito's split with Stalin, many returned to the interwar Yugoslav architecture styles. In the 60s, however, there was like a short, brutalist craze among younger architects, and you can find a handful of iconic buildings from that era. After Slovenia declared its independence from Yugoslavia in 1991, there was a short 10-day armed conflict, literally known as the 10-Day War, fought between Slovenian separatists and the Yugoslav army, which ended in the favor of the Slovenes. Slovenia was officially recognized by all European Community member states as an independent country in 1992, and in the same year it joined the United Nations. With that, an international architecture style brushed through the country. So let's look at some socialist Yugo buildings. The Slovenian Parliament's building was constructed in the 1950s, designed in the shape of a freestanding cube. The building reflects a modernist interpretation of the classic designs, drawing influence from the works of Jože Plečnik. The most iconic part of it is the portal, decorated with statues of different different naked human shapes that represent the working class of Slovenia. And the details are insane on these statues. The inside of the building is decorated with frescoes and mosaics portraying Slovenia's history. When you get off your bus at the main station of Ljubljana, the first monument you might run into is the statue of Rudolf Meister, who was a Slovene military officer, poet and political activist, best known for his activities during the battle for Slovenian autonomy and the battle to keep Maribor within its boundaries against the German forces. The sculpture was made by Jakub Brdar, a Slovene sculptor of Bosnian descent whose work you can find all over Ljubljana. Near the parliament there's the Tomb of National Heroes, which is a tomb for the national heroes of World War II's resistance struggle in Slovenia. The monument is in the shape of a sarcophagus standing beside the underground tomb. It is covered by bronze reliefs depicting scenes from the Second World War with a patriotic epitaph written by the poet Oton Županicic running along the top edge. The Peasant Rebellion Memorial is a 5-meter tall statue commemorating the peasant revolts of 1515, which was the Great Revolt in the Slovenian lands when 18,000 rebels rose up to demand the reintroduction of the original feudal obligations, trade rights, and a right to decide about the taxes. The uprising was sparked by the ethnic German peasants of the Gachi region who killed their lord, then attacked the castles within the region, but the revolt was put down by the mercenaries of the Holy Roman Empire. The sculpture stands near the Ljubljana castle, where the entire area smells like weed and people are just chilling there around the statues. The monument to the revolution is a flag-shaped sculpture which depicts many abstract humanoid figures in relief on a granite pedestal consisting of several triangular slabs. This was created to commemorate the World War II victory of the Yugoslav partisans, as well as honoring the socialist revolution that defeated the occupying and oppressive fascist forces who had divided up Slovenia. The monument has a stone block base and the sculpture itself is made of bronze. There's also the area known as Trg Republike, which compared to the rest of the beautiful Art Nouveau buildings of the city, it looks quite dystopian and brutal. Standing in the middle of this square feels like you're in a whole new universe, thanks to the brutalist behemoths surrounding it. These are the futuristic triangular towers of the DR3 and Ljubljanska Banka buildings. Before the construction of these buildings, the area was occupied by gardens of the Ursuline Covenant, but a group of architects led by Edvard Ravnikar worked on the square from 1962 until 1982. The central section of the square has hosted numerous historic events, including the declaration of Slovenia's independence on the 25th of June 1991. A newer addition is the Europe and the Ball Fountain, or Fontana Europa, standing in front of the Ljubljana University, portraying the myth of Europe and the ball, when Zeus turned himself into a ball to get it on with Europe. The statue's creation was originally started by the famous Slovenian expressionist France Karl in 1955, and it was finished in 1992, far after his death, by another sculptor. According to various sources, it symbolizes the connection of Slovenia with the rest of Europe. So yeah, when it comes to the architecture of this era, especially when we are talking about the socialist landmarks, whether you love them or hate them, that's up to you. But these pieces of Ljubljana's architecture managed to capture an interesting turning point of the city's history, and they hold a high value regardless of their aesthetics. Doing research for these types of videos is always a lot of fun, since I really enjoy exploring various cities, admiring their architecture and learning about their history. Thanks to this trip, Ljubljana has become one of my favorite cities, and I will always think back of the time I spent there with fondness. It is a great travel destination thanks to the mixture of various striking architecture styles and the curious history written into every stone of the city. But enough about that. Have you been to Ljubljana, or do you want to visit it? Tell me in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give me a thumbs up, leave me a nice comment and share it with your friends and family. In an upcoming video I will talk about a small yet crazy Croatian town, so if you don't wanna miss that, smash that subscribe button or the Copperdick owl will greet you. Thanks for tuning in and have a nice day. Plovi, plovi, barka moja, len napni zdaj, jadra svoja.